Western media is infamous for disseminating negative news about the African continent, and this generates a disconnect between people's perspective on Africa and solidifies the false notion that Africa is and has always been poor. If you think Africa is poor, it's most likely because you never knew this. Congo, the most blessed soil on the planet. Congo is ranked the poorest country in the world. In Congo today, you'll witness tens of thousands of unmarked industrial mining equipment digging the soil for resources to be exploited to other countries. A lot of these companies are unobtrusive to the government, many of which do not pay taxes either. Congo's soil is worth over $24 trillion. That's more than the United States gross national income. I mentioned in my first video of how Congo is the largest exporter of bauxite in the world. And by the way, if you haven't watched my first video, don't watch that video. Congo exports approximately $300 billion worth of bauxite each year, but they only retain $3 billion. That is a 1.2% profit. And it isn't just with bauxite. This is with every resource that leaves Congo. Look at the device that you're watching this video on. Key companies that are used to make your device, like aluminum, tantalum, coltan, bauxite, all comes from Congo. These are the most highly demanded materials on the planet, and Congo has by far the largest reserves of it. Pause. It's not just tantalum, aluminum, or bauxite. The world's most sought after goods you'll find in abundance in Congo: copper, cobalt, coltan, and massive reserves of the world's most luxurious articles of ostentation: diamonds and gold. It's not uncommon for people to mine gold and diamonds in their backyard. The biggest diamond in the world, of course, came from Africa. A lady in Sierra Leone found a diamond worth 125 carats in her backyard. What resource are you looking for? You'll find in abundance where I come from. The world is desperate for Africa. And that's counterintuitive, isn't it? The world's poorest continent is also the world's richest. I hope that in some way this rewrites our definition of poverty. Besides, gold is and has always been a consistent symbol of wealth throughout human history, and Africa has by far the largest reserves of it. In my previous video, which I will have linked down in the description below, I mentioned of how gold is predominantly found in Africa, but France has 4 times as much gold in its reserve than every single country in Africa combined. Think about that for a second. Gold and diamonds being a consistent symbol of wealth. If Africa has so much wealth, how is Africa synonymous to poverty? The truth is, Africa is the most valuable continent, hence the reason why throughout history, the world has always come to Africa in search of wealth. Is that not the reality of Africa that we live in today? Wealth has a tendency to cultivate corruption and greed. Many countries are sustained by the exploitation of the African continent. And to mask this, they portray Africa underneath a lens of poverty as though the world needs to be present in Africa to render aid. And the truth is, Africa doesn't need your foreign aid, neither does it need your volunteers or missionaries. And I'm not stating that we should get rid of missionaries, because many are of good heart and have done a lot of good. But what I am saying is, throughout human history, foreign aid has never worked. Exactly how can we call it foreign aid when through glamorous lights you offer $50 billion to the continent, but through dark alleyways you siphon $400 billion worth of resources each year? The best way to help Africa is not through your sympathy-influenced donations, but simply to get out of Africa. Africa has far more than enough to sustain itself. Throughout human history, no nation has ever taken from their resources to help build another nation without expecting more in return. It doesn't work like that. Every country that is in Africa with a sole purpose of profit. Everyone needs to lead. There is no such thing as foreign aid or loans. Multiple countries offer various corrupt African governments large sums of money that they know cannot be paid back considering the interest. And when the loans are defaulted on, this provides more of a leeway to Africa's resources. Right now the time is 3:24 Friday, December 2020. And many African countries are still paying a colonial debt to France worth $500 billion a year. Africa is still paying to France the cost that they incurred during the process of colonizing Africa. Colonial debt is an issue that often goes unnoticed because many are not familiar with how it works. There's so much that goes into it that is far more than the eyes can see, and that is a topic for a different video. I covered an inch of colonial debt in my first video, the one that I said that you shouldn't watch. What many don't know is that colonial debt wasn't just with Africa. It was with every single French colony, including Haiti. Haiti, after 13 years of war against the French government, gained their freedom. France was weakened by their engagement in several wars at once. France was at war with the English, Spanish, and Haiti simultaneously. 1825, France returned to Haiti with 18 warships under the threat of recolonization and restitution. Jean-Pierre Boyer, the former president of Haiti, was forced to pay France not only for their freedom, but also for the lives of French citizens that were lost during the Haitian Revolution. This was a debt that took Haiti 122 years to pay off. In 2003, former president of Haiti, Aristide, in a desperate attempt to restore Haiti, requested that France pay everything that was taken from Haiti. Several African countries has done the same this year. Former president of France said, and I quote word for word, "We have to be honest and acknowledge that a big part of the money in our banks comes precisely from the exploitation of the African continent." At a later date, he said, "Without Africa, France will slide down into the ranks of a third world power." It is a common misconception that throughout history, Africa has always been poor and relied on foreign aid from others. And I assure you, this is a notion that is light years from the truth. The Songhai Empire, West Africa, for example, is an empire that needs no introduction. Songhai at its peak was one of, if not the wealthiest kingdom on the planet. They had banks, they wrote checks to one another, they even had a form of a stock exchange market. One of the profound accounts that we have of this empire came from a French journalist by the name of Felix Dubois. He gave accounts on his experience in the city of Timbuktu. He mentioned of how learned they were. He mentioned of their secondary schools and university education. Songhai at its peak was one of the wealthiest kingdoms on the planet. There are countless examples of wealthy African kingdoms prior to colonization. Another example is Great Zimbabwe, whose king ate from ceramic plates that he ordered from China. Now, I use Songhai and Great Zimbabwe as two examples of wealthy African nations, but there are countless more. I use them as examples because these are two kingdoms that I'm currently restudying. So no, Africa is not poor. I know that my previous video was titled "Why is Africa Poor?" but I mentioned of how poverty is subjective and contingent upon your cultural and social belief. I gave an example of the Maasai community who live a pastoral lifestyle, and the wealthy amongst them have assets worth millions of dollars. If you made it this far into this video, I need a favor from you. I know that you've been preoccupied watching this video, but I'll appreciate it if you can scroll down and press the thumbs up button, because that is by far amongst the best ways to help this channel. I pray that this video has met you well and in good health. I pray that you're safe and that you're currently living the best versions of your life. I love you all so much. Stay safe and have a wonderful, wonderful day.